of the Potomac RPG Podcast. It's only polite to bring offerings of slaughtered lamb when engaging in dialogue with a manticore.
Welcome one and all to the Potomac RPG Podcast, your source for old news, tired conversation, and mediocre advice for all of your favorite tabletop role-playing games. I'm your host and player who hasn't taken their weekly shower yet, Adam.
Oh, I'm your player who shows up late to every session, Ben.
And I'm your player who tries to cheese every encounter, Tom.
Oh, shit. That was good, Ben. I like that.
You had me going there.
I was like, are we going to have to record this? All right. So let's get into the topic for the day. As our hobby grows by leaps and bounds, we get more and more people playing this game, young and old alike. And as such, knowing your manners around a game table is important. People who, despite their desire to play this game we all love, can't seem to conduct themselves in a socially acceptable way. They can absolutely ruin the experience for others. So that's what we're going to get into today, etiquette. And not just normal social etiquette for when we meet with our group, hopefully sometime soon in the future. Please, everybody, wear your mask, get the vaccine when it comes out, but also just play etiquette like in-game and stuff like that. So nowadays, and until this pandemic is over, most of us play over some kind of video chat or Zoom or Roll20. Tom, in your mind, what are some basic etiquette rules when it comes to online play?
Well, online play is great, and it lets us play the game we love, even though we can't be with each other in person. It does make things simple things a lot more difficult. Basic etiquette would be, muting yourself if you're not actively playing or doing something, so that you don't overtalk someone else. There's going to be talking over other people. There's that bit of delay. So being respectful of, someone's talking, or letting someone have their turn and then you talk. Just that basic aspect there. Another thing, if you're DMing a game, a lot of simple things like initiative, managing maps, managing stat blocks, that normally are not real. They're complicated, but they're so much more balls in the air when you're trying to do it all on a computer. So it's really nice to have players keep on that, like keeping track of their initiative. They're not just sitting there and waiting for the DM to tell them, okay, now it's your turn, or moving their own tokens appropriately. And there's a lot of things that they need to engage in or take that extra step to engage in, to take a large workload off the DM, a lot of mental bandwidth off the DM.
Absolutely. Well, Ben, how about you? We've been playing online for what now, like 8 months or something, since March. So whatever it is, in your mind, when it comes to online play, what's some important things to remember manners wise?
Yeah, I definitely taking turns talking so you're not speaking over people. I mean, Zoom is getting better about, giving one person the spotlight in a conversation versus, I don't know, the volume leveling that it does is really good, so that you can actually have slightly more real conversations than other platforms do, but it's still terrible. And especially, so we play in Zoom, and I Zoom with people that are all East Coast and fairly geographically located. But if you're Zooming between East Coast and West Coast, or international, I'm sure that just amplifies the problem, because you don't get the audio cues and the visual cues, of course, when people start talking or end their. It's really weird how much you really depend on those things. You've been building up those cues for all of the years of your life, and then they're suddenly gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so that.
Yeah, it's really hard for those people who typically, in their manner of speech, tend to trail off towards the end of their conversation, because instead of having that hard stop where it's like, I am done talking now, like everyone's kind of like on their tiptoes, just waiting. Okay, are they done talking? Are they not? And then they just kind of get lower and lower, and it's so it is a new world when it comes to how to conduct yourself. Tom and Ben, you mentioned great ones right off the bat. I would also say, in terms of distractions, and I'm guilty of this myself. I have a dog, I have a girlfriend, I have kids running around. So my Zoom screen is a constant like menagerie of different moving objects, which I'm sure can be a little distracting at times. And there's just things that you can do to kind of make sure that you're in it and not a distraction to others. I think another one is just paying attention, which is really tough for over Zoom. When you're at a table sitting around with your friends, it's really easy to be engaged. But we are so in the electronic world that the fact that we are in front of a computer while Zoom is going on means that all the distractions we could ever want are at our fingertips. And that is a test of will, if I've ever seen one, where, the not going, and popping onto Reddit or whatever, during the session is tough, because it's right there, and it's amazing what you can miss just by flipping over to another tab for a while, and then you hear your name called, and it's like, oh shit, what were we doing again? So paying attention at the table, is even more so when you're over Zoom, and it can be tough. But that's why we're having this topic today, is just to get kind of that stuff solidified. So let's get into some questions about it. Our first post this week comes from Reddit user Pseudo Shutdown, who asks, is there an expected etiquette when playing a pre-written campaign book? A friend of mine has expressed interest in getting their toes wet as a DM, but is intimidated by creating a full story or world. As such, they are drawn to the pre-written 5e material as a kind of anchor and a guide. I, of course, want to encourage them, as more DMs make the RPG world go round. That said, I tend to be the kind of player who wants to look under every rock and over every mountain, even if no obvious quest line takes me there. So the question is as follows. Should I, as a player who knows that a new DM is following the script, play into that? Is the metagame etiquette of playing a pre-written adventure to go along for the ride and take paths that seem likely to be cogent with the narrative? Or is it okay to meander about a little? So this is a good question here. Ben, what's the proper etiquette in a situation like this?
So, I think that you should play along with your DM. Try and understand how your DM is feeling, what they're thinking, and go off of what is making them comfortable. It's all right to push their boundaries a little bit, but you have a new DM. They are completely overwhelmed with managing storyline, characters, character names, battle, everything else that a DM is doing, and they are reaching to these fully fleshed out modules that have been pre-written, which is what they're supposed to do. And it's all right even for really experienced DMs to say, hey, we're going to play this this module. We'll throw in a little bit of homebrew, but it's going to be fun because I like this Against the Giants campaign, and we're going to have a great time. That's okay.
You don't want the players like, we're not going to fight the Giants.
Yeah, exactly. Just buy into the campaign, have a good time. It's D&D. Interact with everybody else who is at the table. Communicate. Have a great time. Establish some rapport with your DM, with his characters. You're gonna have. How can you not have a good time playing D&D at the table?
Yeah, I agree. Well, and Tom, you're doing a pre-written campaign right now in your other group, and it when it comes to like following these plot hooks and story hooks, what's your opinion on this?
So, to starters, I feel like even if it's a homebrew setting, whether it's a pre-made or homebrew, players, and I've learned this more as a DM than ever when I was a player. I didn't realize it, and then after becoming a DM, I realized that I had been either inadvertently doing it or not doing it, and I come to appreciate it. Players need to have some suspension of disbelief when they're playing any D&D game, whether homebrew or not, and if you suddenly, and I've mentioned this before, if you suddenly are in the horror movie and instead of you come up to the creepy shack in the woods and you suddenly like nope and just leave, there's never a horror movie. There's just okay, nope, I'm not doing this. That aspect of logic where you just nope out of the situation because you as a thinking person who is not technically in the story, it completely ruins the whole process. And then you're constantly like finding, well, what do I do now? And DM entertain me because now I've chosen not to do your story. Now that's an extreme, but there is a level of suspension of disbelief that you have to maintain to go along with the story. And then as you go along with the story, you learn to, and you become immersed in it.
Yeah, I was getting a little worried about that last night. We were playing Sarah's campaign, and things looked a little dire, and a lot of us were saying, "Well, why don't we just leave? Why don't we just leave?" And I'm sitting there, I'm like, "But if we left, then there wouldn't be a story. Like, we got to keep going, guys. We can't just leave."
In that, I was struggling with that as well because my character,
We all were, yeah.
yeah, we all were. But like with my character, it had been established, at least I interpreted it as a player and within my character's knowledge base, that interacting with the dungeon was causing either magical or some sort of negative influence on the character. Like if you're in a room with poison gas, and if you stay in that room, then you are going to be negatively affected. That's how I interpreted it. So both the player and the character were trying to figure out a way to avoid doing the thing that would negatively infect them. There comes a point where if you're just doing it at the detriment of your character, then it creates some warring, and that is a fine balance of I don't want to do this because it's bad, it's clearly bad, or I want to do this because it's part of the story.
Oh no, but you're doing it for the greater good.
Greater good. That's right, Ben. Greater. Well, and last night we did end up leaving the dungeon, and we're going to like camp out and then come back to the dungeon. So at least Sarah's story isn't completely like laid to waste here. But and admittedly, like this is a tough dungeon that she's put in front of us. But that's where that kind of player character trade off is there, where it's like would my character want to face these undead nightmares? Probably not, but as a player I realize, okay, this is part of the story. We're in it. We have to find a way through it. That's the barrier, finding the way through it to reach our goal, despite the fact that around every corner there seems to be some horror of nightmarescape that will stick with us forever. But it's tough. It's tough there, but completely leveling and or ignoring the story that the DM has put up. It makes it really hard on a DM.
And one thing to kind of bring it back to the question about the premium module and going off the rails a little bit. I've run the same pre-made module twice, or at least a portion of it twice with two different groups.
Mm-hmm.
And in both instances, one was really experienced players who have played D&D and understand how the rules work and that kind of etiquette, that unspoken etiquette. And then brand new players who have never played D&D before and are just doing whatever they feel like. And in both cases, the module would bring you up to a point. The pre-made module would say, okay, the players get into this room and they will either do A or B. In neither circumstance did the players do A or B. they did C or D or all the way down to Z, or they just started going 375, just made up a completely different track here.
That's
There
exactly
wasn't
the same thing that happened last night.
Yeah. So it there's going to be enough just you guys playing the game. You're probably going to come up with ideas or concepts that the modules didn't plan for, because you can't plan for people all the time. So I would say go along with the module as best you can, but you're still going to create a little bit of wonkiness, because you're not going to, unless you know exactly what the module wants you to do, you're going to go off the rails a little bit. So at least initially, I would suggest, before you start looking under every rock, or going off on your own, try to follow the story a little bit and see where it goes, because I'm sure you're going to give a little bit of that craziness to make your DM to have to work with. And then as it goes on, you can get more comfortable with the campaign. Maybe you could try, pushing those boundaries a little bit, but gradually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, within the question, it says about, likes to look under every rock and over every mountain. I actually think pre-written campaigns are better about that. Like they give a lot of detail of the world around. I know just from my homebrew, if you guys were looking under every rock, I'd be like, I don't know what's under every rock. I think the pre-written campaign actually does a better job about that. But more to the point, I think so long as the overall, goal or what you're doing stays intact, you'll be fine. So, for example, let's say, let's take Lost Mines of Phandelver. That's like the most basic, starting point for a lot of new players is Lost Mines. Well, so long as Lost Mines are the goal, then you should be good. If instead you're like, hey, let's head to Waterdeep. Well, wait a second, because it's not the Lost Mines of Waterdeep; it's the Lost Mines of Phandelver. So maybe kind of keep that in the back of your head as to that's the overall goal. So long as what we're doing is going towards that goal, you should be fine, whether you look under rocks or whether you don't.
I've actually had players do that. You joke, but I had players do that. They're like, you know what? We're just going to go to a city. Okay, look at the map. Yeah, we're going to go there. Like,
what? Oh, that's tough. That's tough. So
well then goblins ambush them.
Goblins ambush, yes.
Again.
Absolutely. Again, yeah. So pseudo shutdown. Hopefully that helps. I think we're all along the same lines here that, yes, you want to work with your new DM. They're new. They're going to be thinking about so many different things. And it's really tough on a new DM if you break too far away from the main quest line. That's not to say you can't look under those rocks, but make sure it's heading towards the line of that main quest line. So good question there. Hopefully that helps.
I have news here.
And the sound of Ralphie the News Goblin can mean only one thing. It is time for Potomac RPG News. All right, so I have a recent article, post, whatever it is, that I stumbled upon that tries to outline the basics of playing D&D to make sure you don't make any, significant faux pas. It's titled "How to Have the Best D&D Experience as a New Player," and it was posted over at whatnerd.com. So we're not going to go over every point on here, but let's talk about some highlights. There's a list of a dozen or so kind of things to keep in mind, if you will. So looking through this list, Tom, what stands out to you as some fundamental things that are really important for a first-time player?
I'll start with one, because that's a must-have. Is the yes, understanding the basic rules is really good, but the last part of that paragraph is don't be afraid to ask questions if you need to. And glancing at the rules. Communication with your DM and also experienced players is a big step towards making sure that you're a better player. The game runs smoother. Everything just works a lot better when there's a back and forth of gaining understanding and you're learning this together. I've had players where they didn't read anything and they'd come in and then halfway through combat, they're like, so wait, I can do this, right? No,
Sure.
no. And then you have to have that discussion during combat, which extends everything. And they just get more confused because you're trying to do it really quickly. It's better to, again, read it what you can. But the big thing I've learned with a lot of people starting D&D is they're like, oh, I need to know every rule. I need to read the entire player's handbook cover to cover before I even touch any dice. And no, you don't need to do that either. It's that read the first chapter, kind of like figure out building your character, but it's a social game. Talk back and forth with your DM, with players, and learn as you go. You learn by doing in D&D more than by just mass reading.
And Tom, I want to point out that there is a 30-page basic rule set that is the distillation of all of D&D, and you should find that online. Just Google basic rules 5e. It'll come up, and read that. That's all you need to know.
Oh, there you go.
Know your character. Yeah, know your character, know those basic rules, and then just come prepared to pay attention and be in the flow of this group that you're getting to play with. That's it for newbies.
Yeah. Well, how about you, Ben, with these dozen kind of rules to live by? Anything jump out at you as kind of fundamentally important?
Bring snacks.
Yes, I was waiting for someone to say it. Like, absolutely, bring some snacks.
Yeah, bring. And if the people you're playing with, are like this, bring some beer or some. I don't know. If you're privileged enough to play with some upper crusty players that like wine with their D&D, then you should bring wine or whatever it is that your players are really interested in. Just bring that. If it's cheese and salami, then bring that. But if it's craft beer, then bring that. And just remember, you're having a great time with some people doing something that you all love, and you are all devoting this block of time from your busy lives to do together.
And along those lines, I would say that dependent on what your own interest and knowledge is, that should dictate what you bring. So, for example, I'm not much of a drinker. I certainly don't know my craft beer, and I made the mistake of bringing some beer that I had no idea what it was or how it tasted. It was horrible. It was the worst shit that I've ever drank. I mean, it was really bad. I'm pretty sure Steve and Sarah just dumped it down the sink like as soon as the session was over. It was that bad. Oh my God. So if you don't know your beer, if you don't know your wine, don't bring that stuff. Bring something you know, because it can actually turn into a very poor etiquette if you bring something as heinous as what I brought. Looking at this list, they're all pretty much standard stuff, but I would say a really big one is plan your turn ahead. Nothing slows things down more than it gets to a player's turn and they haven't figured out what they're going to do yet. And especially as a new player, it can get confusing, and it's okay to ask questions and stuff like that. Even if your turn isn't completely planned already, but you have an idea of what you want to do, that gives you a head start. So when you ask the DM, hey, this is what I want to do, am I able to do that? Is there a way that this works? It keeps things moving, because if you have everyone out around the table who they don't decide what to do until it gets to them, that can turn a combat into an entire night affair, and it just grinds to a halt. So plan your turn ahead. Now, quick question back to you guys. This seems to be related to in-person groups mostly. In terms of the now with over video chat, are there some more rules that we can put in place etiquette wise that applies specifically to video chat? So Tom, is there something not listed on here that when it comes to video chat you would be like, absolutely do this?
I feel like I can kind of cover in the beginning of things like muting yourself and working with the technology. Another thing is it is technology, and technology is doomed to fail whenever, especially because the more complex it gets. So just having understanding for your DM and for your fellow players that things happen, cameras don't work, microphones
Internet
don't work.
connections go out. Yeah.
Yeah, internet connections go out. Just having understanding and being supportive, like, oh, something breaks and I can't, like the DM, something breaks on their system and they can't get something going for combat. Just being able to be like, hey, I have a computer that's working. Let me try to get something for you or help you, or trying to, you're working together as on a team so that the game runs smoothly. So just being supportive in this kind of wonky internet D&D age that we're in.
Yeah. Be a team player, right?
Yep. Be a team player.
And
Cool.
don't let technical difficulties ruin your game. That it's just a little thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, how about you there, Ben? Anything that you would add to this list for our current pandemic gaming?
I think that I'm assuming that everybody is video chatting during their pandemics, and I would say keep your camera on and your video on, your camera and your microphone on, unless there's something that you have to do that is going to detract from the games.
Okay.
Having your camera on and your microphone on means that everybody else knows that you are actively engaged, you're listening, you're paying attention, you are part of the drama that is unfolding. When you turn off either of those things, it's like you have stepped away from the group. So yeah, just bear that in mind, that you need to show your group in this one small way and all of the others that you're actually engaged in the action.
That's a good point, especially with the video, because so much of our communication is nonverbal. Seeing the reaction, even if there's no audio reaction to it, seeing the reaction on the faces does a lot to kind of keep everything together. So that's a really good point. You know, if you are video chatting, keep that up, keep that so they can see that you're hearing them and that you're reacting to what they say. That's a really good point, Ben. I like that.
I do like that a lot.
With one caveat, that if you happen to be in a situation where your ambient noise level or the amount of activity in your background is actually going to detract, just apologize for that beforehand and say, my dog is working out. This happened at the beginning of the podcast, by the way. My dog is barking his head off, and I said, I'm going to have to mute myself for a little bit. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, those are some good suggestions. If you're interested in seeing this list, is a pretty basic list, but I got it over at whatnerd.com. It'll be in the show notes if you're interested. But for us, we're going to step out for a moment, but stick around. We'll be right back after the break.
As any tabletop role player would know, coffee is an essential commodity for those 4-hour sessions we all go through. And a great place to get that coffee is foundfamiliar.com. Found Familiar is a couple of people with a passion for coffee creation and D&D. And they've teamed up with favorite artists from all around the world to bring specialty grade coffee that celebrates the creativity sparked by Dungeons & Dragons and other TTRPGs. Use the coupon code Potomac RPG, all one word, at checkout for 10% discount on your purchase. That's at foundfamiliar.com. And with that, let's get back to the show.
All right, how about another question? This post comes from Reddit user QuietSloth900, who asks, players can so easily negate my storytelling. I am feeling pretty down on how easily and often my players will negate my storytelling. I don't mean that they did something so crazy and out of nowhere that all my plans changed so I didn't get to use something. It's been more out of general disinterest. For example, one of my players worships a god widely thought to be made up, and the player wrote in his backstory that he's searching for proof of their existence. The DM says, "You understand that this relic is something you have been searching for your whole life. This proves to all the doubters that your god exists." Then the PC says, "Cool, what's in the next room?" Puts it in a bag, never mentions it again the entire campaign. Okay. I feel like every time I pass the ball to my players, they just place the ball on the ground and walk out of the room. This has been deeply unsatisfying for me. The players seem like they are having fun, but I don't understand why I am creating this story when the players seem disinterested in it. Is this just a general DMing thing where you have to do a bunch of work and just hope the players will actually engage with it? I am not one to control or influence my players' decisions, but should I be a bit more forceful in prompting the players to engage with the story? Or is that bad DM etiquette? I don't consider myself the greatest storyteller, so I am very aware that what I am doing might just suck that much. All right, Tom, so major plot points or character backstory fulfillment completely ignored. What's your take on this? Should the DM be more forceful, or is that bad etiquette?
You, as a DM, you can never force your players to care. And the more you try, the more it becomes that DM horror stories of, you know, the people getting angry and rocks fall, everyone dies. Like it just that you can't force your players to care about something. So it does.
Yes.
A lot of it is that, yes, you do, as a DM, you do need to put a bunch of different things in the options on the table and then see what they are attracted to. One thing that I've learned, because I have players that do that same thing, I've offered a lot of little things to them and then they put it in a bag or whatever and they don't care about it. They don't make the connection. But I've learned that a lot of that is too, my players are very much more interested in combat or being the hero and killing the monster and getting the cool magic item. And that's just their mentality and that's what they enjoy out of it. So one thing that I'm not sure, because I don't see it in your question, but are your players more interested in that, interested in the combat, interested in the mechanics, and less interested, not that they're not interested in your story, I don't want to say that, but that even though they give you backstory beats and there's points for you to mess with, that they're more interested in something else and maybe focusing more on that. However, if you're not having fun with it, if you're not having fun with players that don't enjoy your ideas, because being a DM is also about creation. It's about, I created this cool thing. Do you guys like this? And if they don't like it, that can feel very unsatisfying for the DM because you worked hard on it. So think about it in that sense aspect of what do the players interested in, and not necessarily that you shouldn't do what you're interested in, but how can you spin it in a way that would make it more interesting for both parties?
Yeah, that makes some sense. And also, I think it depends on what have you seen so far. So, yeah, this was in this player's backstory. Have they done anything in the entire campaign related to that, though? Because I think there's, and I think it's poor etiquette, but there's a tendency that you make this backstory just to make the backstory and have your character creation done. And you don't seem to focus that much as a player. So as a DM, I would say, you know, have they done anything to show that they care about searching for proof of their god? And if not, then I would say we probably missed a beat here where this player made the backstory but doesn't really care about it. I would actually recommend that if you're going to include these character knives or little story hooks from the background, make sure that they've shown interest in it in game rather than just as part of their backstory. But Ben, how about you? What do you think on this?
So I think that one of the problems about being a DM is that you put all this effort into it, and you know maybe 10% of it actually gets traction with your group. So one of the best DMs of all time, Matthew Mercer from Critical Role, he puts so much life into his NPCs, and it's just this one. I'm sorry if you guys hear my dog in the background.
Your dog is loving life right now.
Yeah. So Matthew Mercer, he has the most in-depth character creation and great accents, but the characters that actually stick with the group are sometimes just the ones that he makes up on the fly, and they become like recurring characters that happen to have just this gigantic fan base that's behind them and become what people remember, where the characters that he's put real hours into fleshing out, nobody cares about them, or they become, we don't like this guy, he was a dick. it's completely random. So just accept as being a DM that you're going to make so many things, so many cool content things you're going to give to your players, and they're going to say, oh, okay. Or they're going to say, this is amazing. Or you're just going to make something up on the spot, and then they're going to click with it, and they're going to yes and then they're going to build off of it, and you're going to start like a big side quest just because this guy that they met on the side of the street said, hey, nice shoes. And and that is going to be the next session. You just gotta roll with it. Keep producing the cool things that you want to add into your campaign. Part of being a DM is just creating what you want to create and sprinkling it throughout the campaign, because that's what you want to do. Your characters, your players will appreciate it, even if they don't show you at the table that you're appreciating it. They get it. They see that makes you happy, and on some level, they appreciate that this is what makes you happy. So, yeah, okay, that's all I got.
So one thing I want to tack onto that, just because this is a great segue into that point, or whatever you said, Ben, of the players do appreciate that, and they are having fun with what you're doing, and it ties into the actual question where it says, the phrase, the players seem like they're having fun. Well, this is kind of my little soapbox of advice to all players and DMs of any kind of tabletop game or anything where you have a DM or a dungeon or a game master creating something. Say thank you. At the end of the session, especially with like the digital age, it doesn't work as well, like with the online stuff. But send a text, or if you're in Slack or whatever group chat, after the session is done, say thank you. And say thank you and that you appreciate the work, and mention things that you enjoyed about the session, because that tells the DM what you paid attention to, what you care about directly. They're not left guessing.
Yep, that's a great point, and especially with all our technology now, it doesn't take much to do. Just send that text, send that message, because I think we discussed this a couple weeks back. That DM right after the session is over is worried about all the things that they did, and whether they screwed things up, whether everyone's miserable, whether they should just stop DMing forever. Those are the kind of thoughts going through a DM's head. So yes, please do that. To circle back on this question a little bit here, though, when it comes to DMing, I think this is where the prepare to be unprepared thing comes in. That they really dove into this background item, and like Ben was saying, sometimes the off the cuff things have the greatest impact. So I would caution against getting too into backstories and wanting to drop these heavy bombs on the players and stuff like that, because you have no idea where this is going to go. And especially this PC said, in response to getting this relic, said, cool, what's in the next room? That tells me that they are basically an explorer slash combat oriented player. that they're not really, doesn't seem like they're too worried about role play or backstory and stuff like that. So you have your hint right there that they want to see what's next. Give me what's next. Give me what's next. So, I probably shy away from things like, okay, I have to incorporate massive backstory hooks because, they care a lot about it. Well, this PC at least doesn't seem to. Hopefully some of your other PCs do, and you can kind of focus on them. But for this PC, it'll probably be like, oh, you see you find a secret door to this other room. That's what's going to excite them. So kind of keep that in mind. It sucks, Quiet Sloth. Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. That's a lot of work to put in for no reaction from your player. But that kind of told you everything that you needed to know right there. That their reaction tells you everything you need to know about how you prepare for future sessions. So getting into the next segment here, there are thousands of fantastic, weird, and downright horrible stories out there, and some are so ridiculous that you question their accuracy. So let's see if you two can figure out the one that doesn't belong in our segment, Say It Ain't So. Welcome to Say It Ain't So, where we see if our two guests can spot the one that doesn't belong. So here's how it'll work. We'll each read a D&D green text story about player treachery or player etiquette, basically, things that they didn't do very well. 2 will be true, 1 will be false. It's your job to figure out which one is the made up one. Pretty simple, right? So you two ready?
Yep.
Ready.
All right. Let's get into it. So each of us have a story that we're going to read. And I actually got these from RPG Horror Stories, I believe, instead of D&D green text. But Ben, we're going to start with you. What story do you have?
So this happened in Roll20. So I applied and got into a game that's supposed to be loosely based on Tyranny of Dragons module. The DM seemed nice, sensible, despite her heavily accented English. That's okay. I'm not a native speaker either. No problems during her character creation or scheduling. It's usually good news. Huh. I'm a replacement. Okay, fine. What do you mean, the 9th replacement? A bit of a locks socks situation going. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that is either.
No do I. We're old.
The session starts on time. We start role-playing the aftermath of a battle when the party meets with skulking kobold sorcerer. DM. I have to go. Sorry. My family wants me to go. See you next week. Hard stop. A couple of others. See you. Me. What?
Okay. So a very fast end to that one. Okay. All right. Tom, what's your story?
Okay. Part of our first campaign ever played, 3.5. 6 of us are at the table, including DM, the guy who taught me how to play. I'm a college freshman. Nearly everyone else is a few years older than me. I reach out to roll the dice on my turn. Lo and behold, I grabbed the wrong dice. I get it. People don't like other people touching their dice. It was an honest mistake. I didn't shove them in my mouth and gargle them. I saw that happen on a post here before. I didn't even realize they weren't my dice until the DM kindly pointed it out. Sorry. There's a weird thing here. Sorry, that was a typo. He stood up, bent down. We were all sitting on the floor around a coffee table. Put his hand behind my neck and began to squeeze. Like he was scalding a toddler. And started screaming at me, "You do not touch the DM's dice. What is wrong with you?" Picks up my dice. How would you feel if someone grabbed your own dice? Shoves my dice in my hand. Now roll. I actually had a decent roll on the dice I accidentally used. And of course, with my dice, I rolled a natural 1. Oh, this is why you don't touch the DM's dice. Squeeze my neck harder before shoving my head away.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
That took a violent turn. All right. A little uncomfortable. All right.
Yeah, it was
So,
confusing.
third story. I started playing a new campaign over video chat about a month ago. Session 0 starts. None of us knew each other, but we seemed to be getting along well while we created our character. One guy, we'll call him Jack, seems less interested than the rest of us. Had to be called on multiple times to answer for stuff. He definitely wasn't paying attention. About halfway through the session, he goes off screen, but did not mute his mic. We hear him talking quite loudly to someone, probably a roommate, about how much he hates this group. This is so fucking lame, dude. These stupid fucks don't know what the hell they're doing. All they're doing is talking about backstories and shit. Fucking pansies. No way I'm staying with this group. We hear some laughter in the background. We all kind of look at each other, not sure what to do. He comes back on screen, not realizing we heard everything. No one says a word about it, and we continue session 0 as normal. But it was pretty uncomfortable the rest of the night. Okay. All right, so we have a DM ending the session within like 10 minutes. We have a really violent DM who doesn't like their dice touched. And we have some smack talk off screen. So, Ben, out of those 3 stories, which do you think was the fake one?
Oh my god, they're all bad.
They're all bad.
Come on, role players of the world. Please. We've got to be better than this.
Do better.
I abhor violence above all other things, especially when you're all coming together to have a great time. I really hope that B is not true.
All right, so you're going with B as the false one with the violent DM. Tom, how about you? Out of those 3, which do you think is the fake one?
I mean, people can be really horrible, so B and C sound like they very unfortunately could be true. I'm gonna go with A.
The pessimist.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with A as not being real.
Humanity has not been good for us.
Yeah, that's for sure. So you're going with the quick end to a session one as being the fake one. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, the answer, ladies and gentlemen, was the last one. Mine was the fake one. The other 2 are completely true and accurate stories. Unfortunately for us and the human race as a whole, those were
we all lose.
We all lose. There are no winners here.
I was wondering that, because if it does happen a lot that people don't mute properly, and then you hear things you're not supposed to hear. So
yeah, but it's unfortunate. Like the least bad one is the fake one. It's like the other 2. Like, could you imagine showing up for a group and like 10 minutes in, they're like, "Okay, gotta go, bye." Oh. I'd be so angry. But anyway, that was Say It Ain't So. Well done, guys. Better luck next time. We're going to get into our last post for the week. This comes from Reddit user GayGoth98, who asks, boyfriend going to GM looking for advice. Hey, maybe this is a stupid question, but I'm preparing for the start of a tabletop game where my boyfriend is the GM. It'll be with a semi-new group. His old one mainly dissolved conflicts beyond him. The game is starting in 2 weeks, and I'm worried about appropriate behavior. I don't think him or I would behave in any wrong manner at all during gameplay. We're certainly not the type to roleplay sex at the game table. We both appreciate gameplay of it in and of itself. However, when I've done D&D or other tabletops in the past, the relationship with the DM felt more like a boss or something. I'm just worried this is going to make it weird. I've seen him run a game before, and I have no doubt in his capabilities or professionalism. I suppose I just don't want to make anyone else at the table uncomfortable, nor be too impersonal to him. Any advice from anyone who's been in a similar situation? Thanks. Okay, so a significant other DMing here. Ben, do you think there's anything to worry about or any advice to give?
Okay, so my significant other does not D&D, so I don't have that particular experience. But in the cases where... Okay, so I think that most couples have a dynamic that especially if you're inviting a whole bunch of other people that don't understand you very well, if they're, new to your D&D group, and you're gonna have a dynamic between you and your significant other that doesn't quite make sense with the other people at the table until they've been there for 2 or 3 sessions. So do your best to try and play like you don't really know each other. I mean, it's weird. You do know each other, but you should try and play with as much separation as you can get, and let the DM be the DM and the player be the player. Kind of sit in those roles and fully embody them, and don't rely on your relationship as something that you're playing up in that context. That okay. With that said, you could also. This is also a good time for you to set the tone of the session, and there's a lot of great things that you and your significant other can do to make the game and the social dynamics that are going on in the game something that you really enjoy, by setting the examples of how you want it to be played and how you want to interact with people. But
yeah, that's a good point. Like basically, the significant other is almost like a plant in the audience in a way, where they know, the DM and the player know each other obviously extremely well, and the player is almost able to model the type of game that's to be played. Is that kind of what you're saying here?
Yeah, that's exactly what you should be doing right here. Yeah, if you can agree with your significant other exactly. Well, I mean, a lot of the times with a significant other, you don't need to like explicitly talk about these things and agree and write it down beforehand. You just know how you want it to be. So yeah, do that and just try to make no one uncomfortable in the first 2 or 3 sessions. After that, it's anybody's game. But
anybody's game. Well, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of that, and I do want to take a moment. And in our group we have a couple, and I
so uncomfortable.
Sarah have been so inappropriate at so many times, and it just they're wonderful. And honestly, if we had not known they were a couple, we probably wouldn't have known from the gameplay, because they do an excellent job of separating the relationship from the game, and they do a great job. There's times where Sarah goes completely opposed to something that Steve would do, and I love it. They in my mind are a perfect example of how to handle playing with a significant other in a group setting. Now, Tom, how about you? What would you say to this? Anything that this person needs to worry about?
Well, I think Ben gave amazing advice, and I think that is a good jumping off point, to go with the session 0 and kind of establish what you think the game should be, and people will pick up on that and kind of follow suit. But one thing that I took out of your question is take a little bit of solace in the fact that you are worried about this. You are noticing, and you are keeping this in mind. Now, don't try to let it ruin your game, but the fact that you are self-aware goes a long way. Because I've had friends who are in groups where the DM and a player were, significant others, and there's all these allowances, and it goes both ways. Like they were either super harsh or they were super lenient, and it does cause a lot of trouble. But just being aware that you're going into this, that that is a risk, that's something that could be perceived, and as long as it's not ruining the experience for you, just trying to have fun as a player, role play the player and the character.
That's a great point, and you said it perfectly. If you are concerned about being a problem, then you're probably not going to be a problem. That awareness in and of itself is probably going to keep you out of any danger areas. I would say that the biggest thing that any player at a table worries about whenever there's a significant other is favoritism. So long as you can keep favoritism out of it, you're probably going to be just fine. But there is a hard line there where you're either a player or you're a couple. The two are really hard to mix in game. We don't deal with out of game stuff in game, so there shouldn't be out of game stuff such as the relationship coming into the game. They are just another player at the table. They are just another DM. So it sounds like you're keeping that in mind. I think you're going to be just fine. I don't see any issues here that you're going to run into. I think you guys will be great. So Gay Goth 98, I'd love to hear how your session ends up going. I mean, just the idea of being able to game with a significant other is great, and we'd love to hear how it goes for you. So keep us posted on that. But for us, that's going to do it for this week. Remember, if you want to send in your questions or anything you find on the internet, you can send them to questions@PotomacRPG.com. Check out our store for merch at teespring.com/stores/PotomacRPG. If you'd like to support the Potomac RPG podcast, you can find us on coffee.com/PotomacRPG. And lastly, you can follow us at Potomac RPG, all one word, on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for being on the show today, Ben and Tom. Thank you to the rest of the Potomac RPG crew, and of course, all of our wonderful listeners out there. So for the Potomac RPG podcast, I'm Adam.
I'm Ben.
What the hell was that?
I didn't.
And I'm Tom.
I didn't know who went first. Okay. I should have just gone for it.
Oh, proper etiquette, Ben. Come on. All right, till next time, keep those dice rolling, keep those stories coming, and
Never stop playing.
stop playing.
And read the show notes beforehand.